September 14th, 1945. Camp Hearn, Texas, sits under a blazing white sky. Dust from the gravel road hangs in the air like gauze. The heat wraps itself around the black canvas trucks lined up at the gate. Engines cough and idle. A siren moans in the distance. The gate swings open, metal on metal, and out steps a group of men in khaki uniforms. They lean forward to catch a glimpse of the newcomers. A convoy of army trucks has just arrived from the station. Exhaust fumes mix with the dry smell of baking clay. The sound of boots on metal ramps echoes like a drumbeat. Inside the trucks, women sit with hands clenched, knuckles white, eyes darting. One of them, hair pulled tightly under a kerchief, counts her own heartbeat. She whispers the date to herself as if anchoring reality. Barely a month earlier she had been in Bavaria. Now she is in Texas, a place she had seen only on postcards. The truck lurches to a stop. A loud voice outside barks orders in English. The women glance at each other, swallow and stand. Stepping onto American soil, they feel the sun burn their faces. Dust sticks to their teeth. A group of guards forms a corridor. The women walk through, aware of every gaze. Their luggage clinks softly. Ahead looms a wooden barrack with a hand-painted sign in block letters. Processing. A female guard holds open the door. Her face is unreadable. The air changes from hot to cool. Fluorescent lights buzz above. They reach an interior door. A voice commands in clipped English. It is translated by a German nurse. Inside. Undress. The story began months earlier. Across an ocean, Germany had surrendered in May. The Reich lay in ruins. Families were displaced. Cities burned. Victory parades filled American streets. Beneath the celebrations lay a logistical challenge. The Allies held 425,000 German prisoners of war in the United States alone. 500 camps dotted the country, from Maine to Arizona. Behind barbed wire, men waited. Among them were 2,500 women captured with the Wehrmacht in Italy or taken from merchant ships. Propaganda on both sides cast the other as barbaric. German broadcasts warned that American captivity meant humiliation and mistreatment, especially for women. Mothers whispered to daughters about the fate of those who surrendered. In soldiers' letters, America was an unknown giant. The voyage to captivity began in overcrowded holds of Liberty ships. The Atlantic crossing was long and nauseating. Women slept in hammocks, their ears ringing from the hum of engine. They stared at endless water. One night, a storm knocked buckets loose, drenching them in cold salt spray. From New York, they were loaded onto train. Guards threw apples and cigarettes to the women as the countryside rolled by. Through train windows, they saw endless prairies, white farmhouses, cotton fields. Heat increased with every mile. Eventually, they reached Texas. Hearne was a small town surrounded by corn and cotton. In 1943, it had been designated a camp for German prisoners. By September 1945, peace had changed the mood. Rumors of leniency circulated among prisoners, yet fear remained. The women did not know what to expect. Would they be stripped, paraded, punished? As the trucks approached the gate, a radio in the guardhouse played a country song. The singer's nasal voice floated over the constant rasp of cicadas. Inside the processing building, the women stand in line, silent. The walls are painted institutional green. Ceiling fans spin overhead, pushing warm air. The floor is clean and cool to bare feet. A nurse in a crisp white uniform asks for names. She writes them in a ledger. Another woman, also German, translates questions about health and family. The prisoners hand over their identification papers. Each file is placed in a wire basket. They are instructed to remove their shoes. Leather soles slap on the concrete. They untie kerchiefs and unbutton blouses. Fingers tremble, eyes water from the ammonia smell. The young woman from Bavaria folds her dress carefully as if she might need it again soon. She feels exposed. A tattooed serial number on her arm stands out. A white cloth bag is handed to her for personal items. She places her hairbrush and a photo of her mother inside. A guard directs her to the next room. She opens the door, expecting humiliation. Instead, she is hit by steam. Moist, soapy air envelops her. Rows of shower heads line tiled walls. Warm water cascades from the nearest one. White enamel tubs gleam. Soap smells of lavender. A nurse hands her a bar. "You can take your time," she says in German. The prisoner steps forward, feeling hot water on her skin for the first time in weeks. Dirt streaks down the drain. She washes her hair. The scent of soap brings an unexpected memory. Her mother's hands lathering laundry in a wash tub. Tears mix with water. Next to her, another woman laughs nervously and then sighs. A mirror above the sink is spotless. Towels are folded on a shelf. After the shower, a nurse offers clean cotton dresses labelled PW and wooden tags with numbers. These are replacements for the uniforms they arrived in. The women dress. The fabric is rough but dry. A woman with braided hair whispers that she thought they would be humiliated. Another shakes her head. They emerge into a room where their old clothes are put in bundles for laundering. The staff speak politely, forms are stamped. The process feels like a factory. The young woman clutches her numbered tag. Its rope is coarse against her neck. She looks at the sign over the next door. Registration. Through a window, she sees more buildings, orderly as a village. She had expected chaos. There is only routine. Even the guards' boots squeak on polished floors. Life in the camp settles into a pattern. The women live in barracks separated from the men's compound by a double fence. Bunks are lined up in rows. Each has a wool blanket and pillow. In the morning, a whistle blows at 6. Lights snap on. The air smells of wood and laundry soap. They dress in their PW dresses and stand for roll call. An American sergeant counts them. A German officer, also a prisoner, repeats the numbers. After roll call, they eat in a mess hall. Breakfast is oatmeal, white bread, butter and coffee. The food is bland but plentiful. Some women are assigned to work in the camp garden, pulling weeds between rows of cabbage. Others work in the laundry, feeding sheets through a wringer. The young woman from Bavaria is assigned to the library. She dusts shelves and learns new English words from comic books. She is surprised that the camp has a library at all. There are textbooks, novels, even German poetry. She sits on a wooden stool and reads silently. Outside, American soldiers drive by in jeeps, laughter carried on the breeze. A watchtower casts a long shadow. At noon, cicadas sing loud. The camp doctor visits the barracks. He listens to the women's lungs with a cold stethoscope. He gives vaccinations. He smiles slightly when he manages to say a German phrase. The prisoners work in the afternoons. Many volunteer because it gives them something to do. They are paid 8 cents a day in canteen coupons. They can buy chocolate, notebooks, or thread. Evenings are long. They play card games, sew, write letters. They are allowed to post mail to Germany via Geneva. Replies take months. One woman stitches a new apron from a flour sack. Others teach each other songs. At dusk, the guards change shift. Floodlights click on. The fences glow pale. Night brings cooler air and the chirp of frogs. The women lie on their bunks. Some cry silently, others whisper stories about home. Sleep comes slowly but peacefully. There are no screams, no barking dogs, no random beating. The discipline is strict but predictable. Punishment exists. Minor infractions mean loss of privileges, but no one is mistreated. The biggest indignity is boredom. The young woman from Bavaria writes in her journal, "This is not what they told us. There is order. There is no hate." She watches a moth circle a light bulb. Its wings flicker like candlelight. She wonders if she will ever go home. Days become weeks. Summer yields to autumn. Leaves on the few trees inside the compound turn brown. The women mark time by the arrival of Red Cross parcels. Each box contains soap, canned meat, and letters from strangers. An American chaplain visits, offering books and conversation. Some women find comfort in scripture. Others find solace in routines. They compare their camp stories to rumours from other POW camps. Men in Arkansas working on farms, prisoners in Arizona building irrigation canals. They hear of a German woman giving birth in a Florida camp and naming her child after an American nurse. They realise that they are part of a vast system. 425,000 prisoners spread across 500 camps. 2,500 women scattered from coast to coast. The system feeds, houses and works them. It has rules. It follows the Geneva Convention. It is impersonal but fair. The young woman from Bavaria sees that mercy here is not a sentimental virtue. It is a function of structure. A camp is efficient because violence is inefficient. Guards behave with courtesy because it prevents incidents. Officers enforce rules because they know that order is victory. The woman begins to understand that this is how America wins wars. Not through cruelty, but through logistics. Not by breaking its enemies, but by absorbing them without hatred. She remembers the propaganda she heard at home. The enemy would humiliate them, strip them, brand them. Instead, they were told to undress only to be given showers. Their names were recorded, their belongings catalogued. They were fed and kept healthy. They were controlled by routine, not by fear. In this way, they were conquered. One morning, while sweeping the barracks, she hears an American radio broadcast. A voice announces that the war crimes trials have begun in Nuremberg. She stops sweeping and listens. She thinks about home. She thinks about the horrors committed in her name. She thinks about the warmth of the shower on her first day in camp. Tears fill her eyes. She realizes that she's alive and safe because her captors did not hate her. She whispers to herself, "They didn't hate us. That's how they won." She holds the bar of soap she received on that first day. It smells faintly of lavender still. She places it in her pillowcase and closes her eyes. Through the window above her bunk, she sees the sky. The barbed wire is a dark silhouette against it. Beyond the wire, the world continues. Inside, there is order where she expected cruelty. The thought echoes, then fades into silence. The story ends with that quiet recognition. This video is purely educational and documentary in nature. It contains no ideology or propaganda.